John, we have one of the breakout stars of the 2024 season and probably the closer of the 2025 season for the Yankees, though who knows what they'll do in trades and free agency. That's Luke Weaver.
Absolutely great to have Luke join the show. Not only because he's an interesting cat, but we would like to balance the show. We've had how many Mets have we had? It seems like every other week we have a Met, and we don't have that many Yankees, and we have a good one here. He had a fantastic year. A breakout year is the way to put it. You're absolutely right. They got him. He signed. The last 3 years, I think his ERA was around 6, and became one of the best relievers in the game and a guy that the Yankees were absolutely dependent on. So looking forward to talking to Luke today. A terrific young man.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll ask him about that transition, both from being a starter to a reliever and being a guy with a 5+ ERA to being one of the best pitchers in the sport. John and I will talk a lot about the beginning of free agency here, which suddenly includes Roki Sasaki and what's going on with Juan Soto. We'll play hit and error at the end if you stick with us on the show with Joel Sherman and Jon Heyman. John, I think we got two big pieces of news already this offseason. One is that Juan Soto and his agent Scott Boras are going to entertain a lot of teams in California. And I assume either Boris's offices are nearby in Newport Beach, someplace in LA, etc., among those who are interested. So, this is the biggest free agent from the MLB season. The other is a huge free agent from Japan is coming this offseason in Roki Sasaki. And because of the way that he's under 25, the bidding is just going to be what you have in your international pool, which even if you wait until sign him until the new phase after January 15th is roughly between $5 and $10 million for most teams. So everybody could afford him. Everybody will want him. Why don't we start with Soto because he's so endemic to what we do here. He just played for the Yankees. The Yankees obviously are interested in him again. The Mets want him. Everyone would want him. John, you've done probably more reporting short term on this about what's going on than anyone. Why don't you frame it for those of who listen to our podcast where you think things are right now with Juan Soto?
Yeah, I'm with you that Sasaki is big too. That just the drama isn't there because I think most of us are assuming that it's very likely that he ends up with the Dodgers, right? I mean, that's what we've been hearing all year. So it's not as dramatic, certainly not dramatic as in terms of the money and probably the landing spot. With Soto, we really do not know where he's going. I wrote today that Toronto is an obstacle for the favored New York teams. And you would have thought I was telling these Blue Jay fans that they were getting him, and I'm upsetting them because they think they're not getting him. But I'm just saying that they're a hurdle, they're an obstacle, they're a team that is going to go big from what I hear and will be trying hard for Soto. Does that mean they're likely? I wouldn't say that. Does that mean they're the favorite? I wouldn't say that either. But in terms of outside interest, they may be the number one team that's going to try the hardest. We shall see. I do believe Boston's involved, and I said expected to meet Boston. San Francisco will be in there. I'm expecting LA. Certainly, LA is interested. Does he want to go to the West Coast? That is a question. But my understanding is narrowed it down to 8 teams, and the meetings are going to start soon. We do this on Tuesday, so they're starting soon and continuing into next week, as we know. But certainly a lot of drama involved here. Is he going to set a record? Is he going back to the Yankees? Will he stay in New York or will he leave New York? And I mean, these are all questions right now, and we don't really have the answers. I'm not proclaiming that I do, but I do think Toronto is a team that will be trying hard. Does that mean they're likely a favorite? No, I don't. I don't think that's true.
This is a good time not to read your mentions on social media, John, because you're not going to satisfy everybody and it's all going to get misinterpreted. If you say Toronto's in it, half the people will say Jon Heyman's reporting that the Toronto's getting them, and the other half will think you're just trolling them. We should take Toronto seriously to the extent that they were up at 700 million, I believe,
Right. Yeah,
for
we're
Otani as well last offseason. And there was a moment, where I think people thought they might even get him. So I'm going to try to talk about what we can't know, which is Soto's motivations
right.
here. The easiest thing to simply say is whoever pays Juan Soto the most will get Juan Soto. And sometimes people take that as very pejorative, John. I don't. He's earned the right by playing by the rules, which is playing 6 major league seasons, to become a free agent. He is the rare bird who is doing it going into his age 26 season, the rare bird who's in the top 20 players of all time for players 25 and under offensive production, maybe top 15 in some categories, top 10. So if he says, whoever gives me one penny more gets me, that is his right. I do think, not to offend our brethren from north of the border, that, John, you talk to him also, and not that he is spilling his guts. He does seem to be a guy who cares about his historical legacy. And I'm not saying you can't make it in Toronto. There's certainly Hall of Famers who've played in Toronto, but it's a little easier to launch a historic career from the Yankees or Dodgers in particular, and maybe to where we are heading with the Steve Cohen Mets, but certainly by being in New York. Is that a factor? I don't know. But since those teams are probably all, certainly the Mets and Yankees are going to offer a ton, I just wonder if it wins out over a ton from other places, even though it might be a ton plus a penny more someplace else. You have any thoughts on it?
Well, I got to give Zach Greinke credit. I've told the story a bunch of times. As soon as he signed with the Dodgers, I was there in spring training. I think he'd gotten 147 million. He's in the Dodger clubhouse, and he tells me if I'd gotten a dollar more somewhere else, I would have gone there. There aren't many people like that who are that honest. And Soto seems to be a great guy. I think he was very well liked in the clubhouse. He did like the Yankee clubhouse, so that's a plus for the Yankees. I do believe, he's reading basically memorizing from a script in a second language, and he did probably a great job from their perspective. He did say, beyond the fact that he wants to go to a winner, he wants to judge whoever likes him the most, whoever wants him the most. That's the phrase that you used, whoever wants him the most, and that means the contract. And I think I'm with you. I don't see anything wrong with that. You should go for whatever you want to go for. If that's your priority, go for that. And I do believe that it will be the contract. Does that mean it'll be a penny more, a dollar more, even 10 million more? Will sway the day? I don't think so. I think that he's willing to leave a little bit on the table, but I don't think he's going to leave a ton on the table. So, I think while he was kind of memorizing from a script, I do believe that it's fair to read into that the contract is a big factor, and I think we could have assumed that probably at the beginning, right? Contract number one, winning number two, and that might be an issue. I mean, Toronto was pretty average last year, right? And you've got Bichette and Vlad are a year from free agency, so that certainly is a complication for them. They've got the Canadian taxes. You've got, and his mother, I think, is a tax. I don't know if she's an attorney, but I think she's an accountant. So maybe that will play in, and a Canadian dollar maybe play in. They obviously have a lot of hurdles. They haven't been able to lure big outside stars in the past. So, I don't necessarily think they're a favorite, as I said, and I'll repeat that here. But, I don't also think that he's necessarily going to go back to New York just because we like New York and we're New Yorkers. I don't believe that either.
Let me put this another way. Something I've been thinking about a lot, John. Many teams will have a shot to sign Juan Soto. Only one team can lose him, and that's the Yankees. And I wonder what you think the implications of that are. The Yankees had not made the World Series in 15 years. And look, I personally think the 2017, 2019, and 2022 Yankees were better than this year's Yankees team. This year's Yankees team had an easier road to the World Series through two AL Central teams, no matter what Brian Cashman might say about how the competition changes all the time. The reality is they're a team of numbers. The Yankees are 7-0 against the AL Central in the postseason. Since the beginning of the 2017 season, they're 1-7 against everyone else. So they had an easier road. They did get there. The Soto Judge thing is marketable and successful. That's on one hand. On the other hand, I guess when you're the Yankees, you have to always play for today. But there would be a moment like 3 years from now where Aaron Judge and Garrett Cole and Juan Soto, who would now be heading towards 30, are making 120, 125 million of your payroll. Who knows? We're at 2026. I think a lot of us think 2027 might be a lockout year. What does that look like? Is there anything to be said for, man, The Yankees really need to sign Juan Soto. You know what would be bad for them long term? Signing Juan Soto.
Well, I'll say this. You've thought that, and from speaking to him, that the history could mean something to him, that if he wants to be a historically great player. I would take it from the other standpoint that it matters to the Yankees, the history. They are known as a team of great players, particularly great offensive players, right? I mean, most of their greatest players, excepting Whitey Ford and Mariano Rivera, are great hitter, all-time great hitters. Ruth, Gehrig, Mantle, DiMaggio, Judge, and if he stays, Soto. So I think from a historical perspective, it may mean more to the Yankees than it actually does to Juan Soto. In terms of on the field, I mean, you could make a case that you could spend that $600 million better elsewhere, right? You can sign a number one pitcher probably for 200 million or less, and there's Burns, there's Snell, and there's Fried out there on the market, even if you don't get Sasaki, and we're presuming that the Dodgers have an excellent chance to get Sasaki. You could do that, and then you could add a third baseman, which is something they actually do need. I mean, outfield could be a spot. Maybe they'll be okay in the outfield. I mean, obviously, Dominguez and Jones are considered good prospects. We'll see. May not be as big a need as we're making out to be, but you could sign Santander probably for 100 million, right? So 1/6 the price, or maybe even 1/7 the price. You could probably, so you can sign Bregman or Adames for the infield, Santander. You could sign Burns or Fried or Snell, and you're still not up to $600 million, right? And you probably could add Tanner Scott there, and or Jeff Hoffman or Estevez or whomever you want in the bullpen, and you're still not up to, certainly not up to 700 million. So, I mean, I think they'll be okay if they don't sign them in terms of their team on the field. They will be missing that greatness and the fact that they did have the best hitting combination of between with Judge and Soto that I mean, arguably we've seen in years.
Yeah. John, I wonder if we should just even if we think it's a fait accompli, sorry for the French, that Sasaki will end up with the Dodgers. Teams are going to meet with him. They're going to try to at least assume that this is a fair fight here. I talked to Dallas Keuchel the other day. He played with Sasaki for the last 2+ months of the season. No surprise. He was very impressed with both the pitcher and the player. Thought the stuff would translate here. Said some stuff that wasn't in the column, mainly about like size of the baseball, having to make will a team be able to afford a sixth starter, which the Dodgers clearly are going to do next year with Ohtani. So again, another reason why it might work for Sasaki. A team like the Yankees or the Mets or the Padres, some of the other clubs we think might have a secondary chance if he's going someplace else. Can we just pretend for a second that this is a fair fight? What do you think it means if this is a fair fight?
I think we're really pretending at that point, right? I mean, we've been thinking that he's going to be a Dodger forever, and now they're the world champion. I mean, is there any reason that he would go somewhere else? The only thing that you hear is sometimes he's got a connection to Darvish. Obviously, the Padres are going to be in there pitching and trying to get him.
And John, I hate to interrupt, but just to jump in, it's a great point. Keuchel mentioned multiple times the Darvish relationship is that it's something there. I didn't mean to cut you off, but just because it hit my brain there that that he even suggested, would it mean Texas might have a chance because Texas signed Darvish, but he mentioned Padres, other things. So yes.
Well, I mean, Darvish is now with the Padres, and he did come back last year, and he did look pretty good in the playoffs. I do think that they might have an outside chance. I don't think anyone else has a realistic chance. I mean, is it zero? It's not zero. I did my own odds, and I think I had it turned out to be like 1-5, like 83% that he's going to go to the Dodgers. And I'm just estimating based on stuff that I hear. I'm going to go off on a tangent here and now complain about all these betting things. I know you don't even look at them, but they're emailed to us, and I see them all over Twitter. And they're just picking up information about what we have said and misinterpreting it completely. And I saw this one repeated by some prominent people on Twitter. And I've told this betting site, don't email me again. Of course, they keep emailing me. And now he's promising again not to email me. They've got, and they're just picking up that we say the Dodgers are the favorite. I don't think they could possibly be taking bets. I don't know if this is just advertising or what. they've got the Dodgers as 3-1. So in other words, if you bet $1, you win $3 on the Dodgers. They can't possibly take those bets, right? I mean, it's just a total fake, right? I mean, come on. If they're going to take my bet, I don't bet. I mean, I'm urging everyone to go out there, and this is all over Twitter. Dodgers are 3-1. I mean, maybe that's just the opening line, and they'll come down based on the bets. I don't know exactly, but if you can get Dodgers at 3-1, bet the house. It's ridiculous. As I said, they are a heavy favorite. They just steal from what we say, and they misinterpret it completely. They have the Dodgers 3-1. I think the Diamondbacks are 4-1. 4-1. The Dodgers have a slightly better chance than the Diamondbacks. I mean, come on. Stop with these
Outrage
betting.
Jon Heyman is
It's
my favorite
ridiculous.
Jon Heyman.
It annoys me, and I told him
Yeah,
again, do
yeah.
not email me back. I don't want to see your stupid odds. And he said he's not going. He's very
John,
nice about it. So,
John, just before we wrap up here, we have talked about two of the multiple hundred free agents here. There's a lot of attractive free agents in this marketplace. I think there's a lot of interesting trade candidates. Nolan Arenado, Helsley, Devin Williams, etc. out in this marketplace. Probably if you push hard enough, Cody Bellinger, maybe Zach Gallen. I mean, certainly Jordan Montgomery. The Diamondbacks have three free agent starting pitchers coming off the books after next year. They might want to try to regenerate there a little bit. Again, I say it, I hope everyone knows sincerely when I say it, how hard you work at this element to know what the marketplace is. Take anyone, John, you want and say something that you think is important to this offseason.
well, I mean, the most prominent guy, you named a lot of good ones, a lot of very prominent guys. The Cardinals seem to be out there with anybody. They
Yes.
certainly would consider trading Sonny Gray and Michaelis if they're willing to go. Sonny Gray, I know, does have a full no trade, as does Arenado. I mean, the Yankees don't give out these full no trades so easily, but some teams just give them out and it puts them in a bind. I mean, when you have the no trade, you can basically name where you want to go, and that's how Stanton got to the Yankees. He rejected the Cardinals, he rejected the Giants, and he's now a Yankee. And obviously, he's been a great October performer for the Yankees. I'm gonna highlight a different guy, and that's Crochet. He was certainly out there. Last summer, but ultimately the innings issue, and there was an innings issue for a guy who had been coming off an arm problem and thrown many innings the previous year. And he had said that, he wasn't going to pitch in the postseason unless he had an extension. And I get it from his perspective. I mean, he's made almost nothing compared to the talent that this guy is. So I get it. I understand perfectly where he was coming from. But right now, still got 2 years to go. He's a big left arm. He's got 0 innings, at least for 2025. And I think there will be a ton of interest in him. I know the Dodgers and Padres and many, many others made
I think the
offers.
Mets are interested, John.
Absolutely. The Mets, we have named them at the Post. The Mets are interested in Crochet now. Are they going to be willing to give up prospects? I mean, they're not the first team that you think of willing to give up prospects, right? And the Dodgers, they always have prospects. Of course, we think they're getting Sasaki, and Ohtani's coming back to pitch, and 5 other guys, probably Kershaw and Glass now, and Gonsolin and May are all coming back too. So I don't know if the Dodgers even need them, but they offered 2 major leaguers from what I understand, and I saw who they were, and I think the White Sox I was sworn to secrecy on who they were, but I think the White Sox made the right call, not making that trade with the Dodgers. It would have been another bad trade with the Dodgers. Maybe they shouldn't trade with the Dodgers. They're both doing spring and Camelback in Arizona. Maybe they know each other too well. I don't know, but somebody should give up a lot for Garrett Crochet. He's a big arm. Doesn't make much. 2 years to free agency. It doesn't have to be the Dodgers. He can go somewhere else, right? I've seen the Phillies mentioned. I think Bob Nightingale mentioned them. I'm sure there'll be many teams interested in Garrett Crochet.
Yeah, I think the thing that Garrett Crochet that is both that is weighs on both sides of this is you mentioned the injury prone part of this is he's got 2 years left. How we mentioned betting sites, if you were setting an over under for how many starts you think he'd make in these 2 years, would it be more than 40 and a half? Would it be 45? I don't think he'd get to 60, which is kind of like the maximum.
Yeah,
so
I
think
kind of the truth for everybody in baseball, though, right? I mean, the Dodgers are not afraid to get guys with injury reputations, right? I mean, they took Glass now and paid him a pretty penny, and I think going forward they're probably thrilled that they have him, even though he wasn't able to answer the bell in the postseason this year. He did pitch very well for them. If you're the Dodgers and you can afford to have 10 pitchers on call, you hope that 3 of them are healthy and win the World Series. That's the way they'll do it. So I think Garrett Crochet is very, very valuable, and he's not the only pitcher with an injury history. So I don't think that's going to limit his value. That'd be my
Yeah.
answer to that.
Yeah, I don't think it will limit his value. And my flip side, and you mentioned the guy is I think he'll be very much like Glass now and interested in doing an extension. And I wonder if there'll be that 48-hour window to maybe make that part of this, because clearly you would be willing to give up more players if you knew you had them for 5, 6 years as opposed for 2 years. A player we know will be back next year with the New York Yankees because they've already picked up his option. The team option for 2025 is Luke Weaver, one of the great success stories of the 2024 season. We'll talk all about that in the Yankees if you stick with us on the show with Joel Sherman and Jon Heyman. John and I are so pleased to be joined by Luke Weaver, who I guess we should call, at least to end the season, Yankee closer. Luke Weaver, Yankee sensation Luke Weaver, one of the breakout stars of the season. Luke, thank you so much for joining us. I wonder if I could just start there. I know it's probably not an easy 30-second answer, but you're a guy who obviously had a lot of talent, a first-round draft choice. Lots of teams saw stuff in you. The Yankees are your 16. They kept thinking there is something there. Why did it come out this year in the way it came out with the Yankees?
Well, yeah, 30 seconds might not cover.
Yeah.
But the quickest answer I could say is that it's just all about timing. It was patience. It was opportunities. Obviously, I was very grateful for the continued opportunities. Like you mentioned, it started off pretty hot in a good way. I think as players, there's just things that we hopefully bring to the table from time to time that gives us a foundation for teams to continue to want to use us. Hopefully it's not as much as I was bouncing around, but the timing just kind of came to a process that had been going on for years. It had been building to this moment. I think it's the easy answer is just to say it finally came to fruition. It just was reaping and bearing the fruits that kind of came from the hard failures in the process. And I always felt like it was super close. And it was finally about time in my own mind that the world could see what I had been working on.
Luke, thank you so much for joining us. I got to say, you're always a pleasure to deal with in that Yankee clubhouse, and we do appreciate that. I was wondering if there's I know it's been building, but is there anything specific you can cite in terms of your repertoire? It might not be even physical. Is it something in terms of confidence? What do you think were the 1, 2, or 3 things that kind of put it over the top for you? I mean, I think it was Plesac. Dan Plesac said that you were the best reliever going in the playoffs, and the playoffs included some pretty darn good relievers. Not all of them had great postseasons, but I think he was just meaning in general that you were the best one going at that time.
Well, very kind of him. I mean, obviously not a title or a comment that I thought I would be hearing, so very grateful for that. But to answer your question, a couple things that stick out is one, health. I had a track record there where it was a lot of just a little petty, just flexor strains and a little this, a little that. There was also a mix of some longer term 60-day IL stints, and it just became repetitive. It just became the same obstacles and then kind of resorting back to the same moments. And I think it's not that I wasn't trying, right? It wasn't that players aren't not sitting there just like, okay, I hope it works this time. I was putting a lot of work into it. And the big thing was finding the way to efficiently move and feel like I'm not creating, blockage or obstacles in my way. And so changing the leg kick was something that nobody was expecting. I personally wasn't either. It was a part of progression in the offseason where some drills come together. You're kind of floating in that hovering state where the leg's kind of just above the other leg and you're throwing. And then it just felt good. It looked good, it felt good, and it was consistent. And as soon as I incorporated the leg kick again, I was like, oh my goodness, here we go again. Like just negative feedback. It didn't feel good. All the trifecta, I'd call it, were not matching up the same way. And I think a big reason why I did it as opposed to then and instead of in the past was because I don't know if it was fear of the optics or if it thought it was going to hold up or the velo was going to be there. All the many questions that I was like, I don't know. There's a lot of guesswork in this, but I was committed. And at the point, I was like, I didn't mean to blindside people, but I knew what I was feeling and what was coming from it. And it was just too much of like a clicking to avoid it and to not go kind of full send. And so I am grateful that it did work out. But I know there was some head scratching going on. And I was just like, just trust me, just trust me.
Luke, I wonder if we could drill down on that a little bit. Did somebody, because clearly the Yankees were surprised, right? In spring training when you use the abbreviated leg kick.
Yeah.
And was it somebody who suggested it? Was it just trial and error by you where it clicked for you and you said, I think I should do this? And if I remember correctly, because I was with you guys in spring training, you didn't have initial success with it early in spring training. Did you have that period where anyone from the Yankees came to you and said, Luke, we re-signed you because we kind of believed in that guy last year who made a couple of starts for us. Can you please do that thing again? Because we think that guy is good and can be worked with. Can you just take us through that?
Sure. You're not wrong. I obviously could have communicated that better. But to my point in my own head, I was on such a mission, right? I was so kind of the blinders are on and I was just like full send, like I had mentioned. And it's not anything someone told me to do. So I had always believed that if I could throw like a shortstop or if I could throw like somebody who wasn't trying to pitch, that and I kind of just said it in my head. I would just kind of like, you kind of just whip a ball around, like, you act like you're fielding and you throw it and it feels good, it's coming out good, and you're just like, well, how do we replicate that and not be robotic on the mound? And I was always like in that idea of like, well, what does that look like? And I think I finally accepted like, and it clicked like, this is it. Like, this is the optics I don't care about anymore. I've done this. I've gone through too much failure. I've already seen what this league looks like. And, at that point, it shouldn't be about like worrying what other people think it looks like. And then I think there was some motivation to confirming like with the Yamamoto signing of, oh, now I'm seeing a guy who is showing me what that looks like. And so it was kind of like confirmation in the process of which I was doing it. So that actually did help. And granted, I couldn't do a lot of things he could do. He's a very freakish athlete, he gets into a lot of positions that take a lot of, unique skill. But to your point about spring training, it didn't happen right away because I was still very raw in trying to figure out what worked for me. And with a little bit of direction and acceptance from the staff and understanding, like it just became about, okay, I feel consistent. I'm throwing strikes. It's coming out well. I feel good, but the velo is not quite ticking to a point where I'd want it to be. And I was never worried because I personally have never been worried about the velo. It's kind of always just been there for me. But there was concern about like consistently repeating a movement that allowed me to get to it. And then when I finally figured out what it looked like, then it kind of took off by storm. And then it was just about trust. And then from there, build confidence. And then from there, it just became successful, I guess.
Joel mentioned, I think that you've been on maybe it's 5 or 6 previous teams. I don't know if I can name them all. I absolutely remember St. Louis and Arizona. I think
Yeah.
Kansas City. There were others, but you and I have talked about this before. I don't think you envisioned yourself really embracing New York. So I wanted to ask you about that. You're from D-Land, which I
Yeah.
think DeGrom is from
Yes.
somewhere. Right. I don't know. They grow great pitchers in D-Land, apparently. But how are you feeling about New York now? And originally, what were your thoughts when you heard you were going to the Yankees?
Yeah, so I know I had probably mentioned it, and I generally felt like because at my after my or while my year was going on, so it was Cincinnati and Seattle last year, and so I had made 20 plus starts with Cincinnati, a start or so in Seattle, and that was short lived. But I felt that way because it was like the compounding of the year, right? It was just a lot emotionally, physically draining, and then New York playing me, and it was like now I'm going into the mecca of all teams, right? And into a market and a platform that is just as strong as any. And it was just at the time an interesting place to go. And I think I remember just finally like, okay, accept it, understand it, and then go in and try to put your best foot forward and learn something. And I remember going into those starts, and they immediately had some adjustments for me, which I was thankful for. And then at that point, it was like I'm trying to almost treat these big league starts, even though I'm competing and I'm trying to win, but I'm okay with trying these things in the game, which I would never be because I'm, you know, selfishly going to what I think works. And I was able to apply those things and fight through some of the mental battles of like, hey, you shouldn't do this. Like, you don't know how to do this. And it was like, hey, I'm doing it no matter what. And it worked. And it showed that there was some really cool things that happened in those outings. And so that gave me a lot of um, confidence and kind of propelled me into the offseason. So when I did resign, it felt like there was some momentum kind of picked back up from my side, and in that was able to kind of tweak the things we've talked about and to take that off and really just go and run with it. And a big part of another thing as well was the pride aspect of like, hey, you might not be starting, like you might be in a role that you are unfamiliar with, you might be in something that isn't necessarily what you want, but I'm a big believer and you have to earn the things that you get to have, and you have to go be able to perform and prove whatever it is that you actually want. And so I didn't know those things were what it would end up being at the end of this year, but that's just kind of how it unfolded, and I just took a lot of gratitude and appreciation for how it went.
Earlier, Luke, when you mentioned that you were trying to replicate feeling like a shortstop on the
Yeah,
mound, I was thinking to myself, because I knew the Deland combination is that's kind of always how I think about Jacob deGrom, is he's
yeah,
such a good athlete and he's so efficient on the mound. It feels like I'm watching a shortstop with the great capacity to pitch because he's so repeatable and efficient, like I don't know, is there anything there that, or am I just because you both went to the same high school?
you're not off. You're not off at all. So Jacob, I've met him a few times. My dad will occasionally see him at the local hardware store type of thing.
There
Back in
goes
the
a
land.
not surprise if you knew DeGrom that it would be at the local hardware store.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I mean, we're
yeah.
not besties by any means. I wouldn't hate having a strong relationship to understand some pitching aspects and what makes him great. But we've had some good conversations, and um, to that point, that is somebody that I admire. That is somebody that I've looked up to in the game. He's a great person off the field as well, but there is a lot of similarities in achieving the freedom and I guess the easiness that comes when you watch him. I actually in high school, I believe it was high school, but I watched him play shortstop at Stetson. Like, so I mean, we're talking. We played our high school baseball games on that field because we didn't have lights at our place. So I'm very familiar with that ballpark, and I even watched Corey Kluber back in his day pitch at Stetson. So there's another arm for you. But at the end of the day, he played a lot of shortstop, and pitching wasn't at the forefront. He started closing some games or throwing, I think, out of the pen late in his collegiate career. But we see the video of him and Sale, right? That there's a fun video of him hitting a home run off of him. But he could swing it. He had some pop. But I think a lot of that helped propel him into who he is now and allowed him to move easy and free through it and kind of have that mindset that makes sense from being athletic. And that's all I've ever tried to be, was to not robotically pitch. And that's what's always frustrated me over the years.
What stands out for you about this postseason? You were really good in it. I think you had a 1.76 ERA, even better than in the regular season. Obviously, the team advanced to the World Series, which is a great accomplishment. We both, Joel and I, and other media people have pointed out the Yankees didn't play their best when they got to the World Series. Were good in the first two rounds. Obviously, there were some base running issues, and the defense for that one inning wasn't particularly good. What are you going to recall from the postseason? I know Aaron Boone had mentioned the one thing he regretted was not leaving you in longer. I think it was in the game one, and then some people had suggested in the game five that he should have brought you in for two innings. I don't know if I know your arm was still feeling good, you were still throwing good, but I don't know what you thought of that. What stands out for you as you look back on that postseason experience?
Sure. Definitely some moments, right? Some good, some bad. I think it was disappointing to know that we weren't able to have our 100% best results on the field, and that's just how it goes, right? It's all about timing, who's hot, who's not, whatever. Um, I thought, we held it together pretty well when it came to just internally, when it came to as a team. We respect each other and just appreciate each other so much. Just, all the many things guys would agree with me on. To a couple of those points, you know, I, I was ready. I was ready. I did feel good. It's not that I wasn't feeling the toll of the season, but at those points, it's like, what else am I gonna do? I'm gonna go lay around for a couple weeks after the fact. So I'm ready to lay it all on the line. And but there's a lot of trust in our guys. Like, that game five, like that's to me that's the absolute, like, there's no regretting that decision in my opinion, because Tommy Canley is as good as anybody, and he was lights out. He had no bumps in the road. I mean, he was changeups galore, right? Like, that guy is so good at doing what he does. And baseball happens. They had an attack plan, and they succeeded in it. And you can second guess all you want. I sure know that it goes through my head. Game one as well. Like, should I have, tried to fight against being taken out? Those are some things that I truly am like, I look back at it and, I'm out there and it's the heat of the moment and they tell me I'm done. And then, I believe in our guys and there's no regret in that. But sometimes you just think things like, should I have kept pitching? Should I have done this and that? And I think that's just a tough place to live. It's already hard enough. It takes a toll on you, especially when you're sitting there second guessing. And, it just wasn't meant to be. We didn't time it out the right way. It's definitely devastating. But for me personally, I had a lot of peace in reflecting. I made sure throughout it all that I was taking the time to appreciate what was happening, especially as someone who's never been in the postseason, who has gone through failures and all the many things in between. And I just had a real appreciation for what we did. And I hope a lot of the guys feel the same way, even though it still hurts.
Luke, it feels to me, and you mentioned all these parts during your talk with us, which we truly appreciate, it feels like you had three stages so far as a Yankee. Those three starts late last season, which was an introduction. And by the way, if you watch it, you were like me, I was like, yeah, I see why everyone's interested in Luke Weaver's got a really good arm. You could see it in those three starts. And then you had a very good season as a reliever. And then something happened at the end. You got put into the closer role. And I mean, it's 8 games, but it's 11 no earned runs, 24 strikeouts in 11 innings. You mainly carried it into the postseason. We wondered, oh, pressure. You didn't seem to be bothered by the pressure at all. You seem to thrive on it. So it's a two-part question. Did you do something better as a closer? And do you think it's something that carries over? Do you think this is now you, that guy who pitched from mid-September on and was as dominant as Emmanuel Clase or Mason Miller, like whoever you think is the great closers, you were there. Those two thoughts.
It's pretty crazy to think about, honestly. you look up to, I mean, you watch those guys and you're seeing absolute dominance out of a lot of these guys you watch. I mean, and you always feel like it could be you, right? It's our imaginations are a wonderful thing. We definitely like to picture a lot of these moments. The classic, bases loaded, no outs type of situation. I think typically you're wanting to hit a home run in those imaginative moments. But honestly, I just think there was just so much experience and from not doing well. Like if I can handle not being good and continually getting beat up all the time and to have to show up every single day to be a good teammate, to be a good father, a husband, all those things that take a toll just from the career, like those moments definitely are stressful. They're definitely taxing. They're definitely exciting. There's a lot of adjectives to describe it, but I truly felt like the game slowed down for me. And I felt so comfortable in who I was, not only as a person, but as a player. Like it's the type of confidence that I had prayed for a long time of just like, give me health. And then I know I can go do these type of things. Like I truly believed it. And, I might have been able to show that early on as a younger guy. And then it kind of, fades out a little bit. But I think it's just a testament to trying to continue to push forward and to know that your last pitch is, there's always something that can come from it to learn, but also you never know what's on the other side of it. And I remember being bases loaded with the no outs there in that situation. And I'm warming up, and I remember a moment right before it's about to start, and I just know like deep breath, just taking the crowd. And I'm really at peace. Like I'm very relaxed and which is surprising. And I just told myself, man, they really need a superhero right now. But if I can't do it, I gotta be okay with the results that are gonna come from it. But I'm gonna give it everything I got. And, I was able to get 3 outs. Obviously, it was a very strategical way to have to get the 3 outs and get out of there. So that was disappointing. But I remember just in the midst of the biggest moment of my career and, life in that baseball sense, just quickly reflecting on like this used to be so hard to think through. And now it just feels like not easy, but it just felt a little, I guess, a little easier.
I wanted to ask you, I think I've asked you this before. Can we get you an extension now that you're one of the best closers in baseball? I understand coming off the years that you had, getting any major league deal was good.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not critical of that in any sense, but obviously the Yankees get a bargain for this year because of the option. But I get it. I mean, I don't think you had other major league options at the time. So this was it. But what about an extension? Now you seem to feel comfortable in New York.
Yeah.
You've done great in a big spot. What can we do for you? How about 2 more years?
John, that's I'm gonna say this the right way, but I love playing in New York. I really did. I don't want to say I shocked myself because I understood that the platform is so giving and it can be a tough place to play, but it's because people care a lot, right? There's so much history, there's so much um expectedness to winning. And that's all I've ever wanted. We're all winners. We all want to win. So this is a place I want to be. I mean, this is a team that I know can replicate what we did. I know there's some moving parts that have to happen this offseason that they'll handle their business on. But yeah, I mean, I'm absolutely open to having those conversations. And I know there's probably a checklist and what they got to do, but I would love for them to have that conversation so we can, do this together and to try to do a better job than we did last year. And that was only just by a couple games. So that's the cool part. And I think the learning from it as well is just only going to make us more complete. And we got the leadership to do it. So hopefully with a little bit of a time under my belt here in this concrete jungle, as they would call it. I'm definitely determined to replicate and maybe even do a better job if I can.
You know, Luca, it's hard to miss that Michael King, who was a Yankee reliever, went someplace else and became one of the better starters in the sport. Jordan Hicks became a starter this year. Ronaldo Lopez became a starter not long ago. Zach Littell.
Mhm.
What is this your role now? What you've learned about your body and how to make it more
Yeah.
efficient work? Would that work over 100 pitches? How are you training in the offseason? Have the Yankees told you what your role is?
Yeah. So first off, I think it's cool to be able to have this conversation, and there to still be, I guess, a door cracked on it. I definitely feel that I have the capabilities more than ever to handle that. I think understanding my arsenal with room to play for a fourth pitch, the curveball or something of that significance will be a determining focus and factor into adding that if possible. But I've never felt in more control of my command, my pitch mix, understanding how to navigate, adjusting on the mound. So I'd be doing myself a disservice if I said I wasn't confident in the ability to go start and do that. That's going to be out of my hands. So if it's a conversation to have, then I'll have it. But at the moment, I think there's still some understanding of what they want to do. I'm going to prepare in the ways that I typically do and to be ready. But I think at the end of the day, I'm more than happy to double down on what happened last year and be someone that they can count on.
But
But
just to be clear, like you haven't been told like train as a reliever, train as a, like the Yankees haven't told you
Correct.
anything. So does that mean this offseason you train as a starter because it's always easier to break it down for spring training and get to the shorter thing? Like, does anything change in the offseason?
I don't know if anything changes drastically. I don't think it's something where I have to flip a script. I think there's I mean, if you have two streets, I think they're pretty close together, and it's not like you're having to veer hard left or hard right. Uh, that conversation, I'm sure I don't know when it would happen, right? We've checked in on trying to figure out throwing programs and such, but as of right now, I'm training to be a reliever. I'm training to have the ability to be multiple innings and all that fun stuff. So I think with that ability to do that, brings in a lot of the starter like mentality and training, because I think at the end of the day, I don't know, the multi-inning use thing just feels like something the Yankees like to do. It's something that gives us a lot of flexibility and versatility, and but it's not necessarily the easiest thing in the world to not just go out and try to get 3 outs right out of the bullpen. The sitting down is something between innings where you go back out and you have to kind of recharge the batteries and get fired up and go. And so that has helped me from starting. But doing that multiple times is just a matter of building the arm, just capacity to do that, like early in the season for 2 to 3 innings or whatever it might have been.
Well, you've been so good. We've kept you over time, and we appreciate it. And I know you're at a conference. If you have to go, you can just start running now. But I did have one final question. I think it's
Yes,
probably
yes.
predictable. We haven't touched on it yet. Juan Soto, he's the story of the day and of the week, and obviously the Yankees want him back. I've heard he loved the clubhouse. I mean, I don't know if he loved everything about New York, but I know he loved that clubhouse. What do you think? What's your prediction? You feel good about this?
I love that, man. I really do. I love being on his team.
Hmm.
I do not love being on the other team, which I have been a couple times. I think a lot of pitchers would agree with me. He is the best guy. He's a humble superstar. He has all the attributes you'd want, obviously on the baseball field and as a human being in the clubhouse. I have nothing but amazing things to say about him. We formed a great relationship. I'll never forget the first time he called me. So he could call me a unicorn, because I was doing a lot of different roles and doing multi innings and doing these things and just trying to help the team. And it felt like the biggest compliment in the world coming from one of the greatest players we've all ever seen. Right. And even though he's younger than me, and hasn't been in the game as long, even though it has been a long time for him now, it was just one of those type of I guess, moments where he continued to say it. And I was just like, I'm humbled every time he did. So he means a lot to me as a teammate and as a player. And boy, oh boy, I mean, I don't think I think it's infinity amount that you could give this man and that he would be worth every penny. So I really hope they can get it done. But at the end of the day, whatever's best for him and his family. And we just hope it's us. We really do.
Yeah, we might have to figure out how many zeros there are in infinity before it's all said and done. So it's Luke, look, John mentioned it. You went beyond the call of duty here. We appreciate you so much joining us, the insight, taking us through this journey, which was a great journey, by the way, for those of us who I'm sure fans and those of us who were covering you watch this year, because I think there's few better stories in sports than the kind of like greatness from nowhere aspect, and your rise this year to the most important relief pitcher in the American League champions bullpen was a great story to follow, and you were always kind with your time to explain it, and you were certainly kind with your time here. So John and I truly appreciate it.
Thank you so much. That means the world. It really does. It is crazy to see how it's transformed, but definitely humbled and appreciative and thankful for all the fans and even you guys as support along the way. And you guys have been awesome. So hope to continue the success, and we'll just maybe do a better job this next year.
All right, Luke, have a great offseason. Thank you again so much for joining us.
Thank y'all.
John and I, of course, thank Luke Weaver for joining us on the show. John, hit or error?
I'm going to give a hit to Roki Sasaki, who we talked about earlier, for coming over and giving up the big bucks, doing what Ohtani did, coming over before he can be a full-fledged free agent. You have to be 25. He's only, I believe, 22 years old. He is a phenom, another Japanese phenom, a right-hander, and I think it's great that he's coming over. I think, we all think he's going to the Dodgers, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of complaints from fans of the other 29 teams if he goes to the Dodgers. But, if he does, I mean, to me, that's life. They have certainly set themselves up beautifully with the deals that they've made and the reputation that they've gained. And if they get him, more power to them. Obviously there are some advantages to being in LA, but not everybody wants to be on the West Coast either. So there are some disadvantages too, and they've played the game well. So I'm anticipating if and when he does go to the Dodgers, we're going to hear a lot of backlash, and I'm not for that. I'm for Sasaki coming over early and deferring the big bucks for another 6. He is obviously Ohtani is famous for deferring, but Sasaki is deferring in this case.
Yeah, not to mention difference from the East Coast, 5 or 6 hours closer flight wise to Japan, both for the player, his family, and actually any fans that want to come. And as we saw in Dodger Stadium, lots and lots of fans come.
I will say that goes both ways. I mean, the Dominican players are more apt to prefer staying on the East Coast, right? So
I think it's a factor with Soto, if you believe the stuff that he doesn't like the idea. You mentioned his mom in our opening segment. I think anyone who was around the team understands he's a bit of a mama's boy. And the word was he didn't like that. He's right. He didn't like the idea of his mom being asleep when the games were over on the West Coast because she was back on the East Coast. John, I'm going to give an error to our brethrens in the BBWAA. I get Paul Skeens obviously up for Rookie of the Year, though if I had a vote for Rookie of the Year, I did not. I would give it to Jackson Merrill. I also did not have a vote for NL Cy Young. I'm just trying to understand, why would Paul Skeens, who threw 130 innings, why would you say he's more of a candidate than, say, Logan Webb, who led the National League in innings and pitched at a high level? I get it. Maybe Skeens was held back by the Pirates or whatever, but have we really reached the point where just your performance with all the ratios, that's the only thing that matters? It doesn't matter that Logan Webb threw 70 more innings than him. Michael King threw 50 more innings before him. By the way, Ronaldo Lopez looks like him on a piece of paper and threw the same amount of innings. I'm not exactly sure. I know Paul Skeens is famous. He did some historic stuff as a rookie, but really it's 130 innings. If you told Zach Wheeler just throw 130 innings, what would Zach Wheeler look like? What would Logan Webb look like? You know what it felt like? It felt like the Three Bears. We're going to have the guy who's the heavy duty guy in Zach Wheeler. We're going to have somebody in the middle in Chris Sale, who does both, and we're going to have a guy who throws 130 innings. 130 innings. It's not enough to be considered for the Cy Young. I guess you could say, well, Emmanuel Clase is up for the Cy Young, and he's a closer. I'm not sure that that's right either, but he's actually doing that job. And I just think that you're almost penalizing somebody like Webb, who does something so valuable for your team by saving bullpen for other people in the way that Wheeler does, in the way that the full Garrett Cole does. We've lost respect for the workhorse element of that job.
Yeah, I mean, Clase's got obviously fewer than 130 innings, but they were big innings. He's closing out the wins, right? So, I understand that one a little bit more. I mean, I didn't have this vote either. I'd have to dive into it, and I'm not sure that I love Webb. I mean, I think he's fantastic. Imanaga was great too. I don't have all the numbers in front of me, but it was a little surprising. I will say this: I do think Jackson Merrill is the Rookie of the Year, as you do. I don't know that he's going to win. It seems like
I don't think he's going to win.
I don't think he's going to win now.
Well, the fact that Skeens is up for the Cy Young screams to me that Jackson Merrill's not going to win that. I know that oftentimes the same people. New York has a very large chapter, so people like you and I only vote for one award, and I think we'll both announce after the awards are official. I think next week at some point which category we voted in and make our ballots public. But I think the fact that Skeens went out there, can I throw in one other stat, because I break this down when I write at the end of the year who I'd give the award to. One of the things I look is like 10 top offenses all averaged over 4.6 runs a game this year, and I'll see which pitchers performed the best against those teams as a way of saying, hey, sometimes we've given awards to people in the AL Central or the NL Central who might not be facing the best teams quite as often. Logan Webb made 18 starts against those 10 teams. It was, he faced like a ridiculously that's more than half his starts, more than half his innings were against just those 10 teams. And again, you want to penalize, Paul Skeens made 7 of his starts against them. He just didn't have the bulk, and he didn't, because of where he plays, face the Dodgers. He did face the Dodgers, but as often, or face the Mets as often, who were a good offense, or the Yankees or the Orioles. I just think we're not looking big picture here. We're just so caught up in the ratio of it all now.
Well, you did a deep dive on it. I think that was admirable, particularly since you didn't even have that vote. You're convincing me, but I think the headlines probably won out, and I think he's going to finish third, I assume. I think Sale will win and Wheeler will finish second, and he'll finish third. Should he be? He certainly should be in the top something, probably. But I'm kind of with you at this point. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking at that Rookie of the Year, and Merrill playing center field for the first time in his life was very good in center, was incredible at bat, was very clutch for a team that came within 2 runs, and I was at Game 5 against the Dodgers. They came closer against the Dodgers than either the Yankees or the Mets did, and a big part of this was Jackson Merrill, who was their best player on arguably the best team. Now, did they pull it off and win? No, they didn't win in the end, and nobody considers that anyway. But, I mean, Jackson Merrill had a bigger impact on the standings and on the season, to me, other than the headlines that Skeens did, and I hope. I know we didn't have that vote, and we're probably in the minority, but I think Jackson Merrill deserves the Rookie of the Year.
John, I was in Padre camp when it opened this year. They had 2 outfielders on their 40-man roster. 2. Jose Azocar and Fernando Tatis Jr. 2. They couldn't have started their outfield from their 40-man roster. If Jackson Merrill doesn't go to a position he never played before and play it at the level he played, I know people say, hey, it's not a narrative award. If you're voting for Paul Skeens, it's a narrative award because you think he's a historic player. That's your narrative. So you'll say to me, I'm doing narrative when I think those people are doing narratives. I will give you my narrative. The star of this show is always Tommy Hogan, the producer who helps us so much. And really, people should know, like, John and I are always working to get a guest, and we, at a moment's notice, will say, hey, Tommy, can you jump on? And Tommy always jumps on and always helps us through. He does such a great job. Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts, give us a listen. The New York Post YouTube page, give us the New York Post Sports YouTube page, give us a view. And please come back week after week and stick with us on the show with Joel Sherman and Jon Heyman.